Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The dark expanse of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by the faint glimmers of distant stars. Among the cosmic silence, a hulking derelict spacecraft drifted aimlessly, a relic of an era long forgotten. The Titan's Resolve, once the pride of Earth's pioneering fleet, was now little more than a colossal ghost ship. Most of humanity had written it off as a lost cause decades ago, believing it to be swallowed by the black hole it had been sent to study. But today, its unexpected return was a cosmic anomaly that no one saw coming. On board the exploratory vessel Eos, Captain Lila Marrow squinted at the scanner display, her brow furrowing as she read the improbable data. "This has to be a glitch," she muttered, tapping the console with a mix of skepticism and mounting unease. "There's no way the Resolve could be here. It disappeared 50 years ago." Beside her, her second-in-command, Ethan Kane, crossed his arms, a grin creeping across his face. "Glitch or not, we've got a ghost ship floating in Sector 38B. And it's transmitting a signal. A distress signal. A distress signal after half a century?" Lila shot back, her tone incredulous. "That thing shouldn't even have power left." "Exactly why we need to check it out," Ethan countered, a spark of mischief in his voice. "This is the kind of mystery that gets written into history books, Lila. Don't tell me you're scared of a little haunted spaceship." Lila glared at him, though a smile tugged at her lips. Ethan had a knack for turning tense situations into jokes, a trait that alternately infuriated and endeared him to the crew. "We're not investigating this because it's spooky," she said firmly. "If there's a chance someone, or something, is on board, we owe it to them to respond." She turned to the ship's AI, an advanced system affectionately named Iris. "Iris, plot an approach trajectory to the Resolve." "Slow and steady." Iris's synthetic voice responded with a calm, almost motherly tone. "Approach trajectory calculated, Captain. ETA, 15 minutes. Recommend all crew members prepare for potential boarding operations." The order sparked a flurry of activity among the small crew. Lila and Ethan donned their lightweight exosuits while their engineer, a no-nonsense tech was named Kara Voss, double-checked the boarding equipment. In the corner, the ship's medical officer, Dr. Ravi Patel, muttered prayers under his breath while readying a med kit. As the Eos neared the derelict ship, the eerie grandeur of the Resolve became apparent. The ship was enormous, nearly 3 times the size of their vessel, and its metallic hull was riddled with scorch marks and deep gouges, scars from battles long past. Its angular architecture and dormant weaponry hinted at an era when humanity had prioritized military might over exploration. The Resolve looked dead, but as the crew moved closer, it became clear that something unnatural was at play. The ship's exterior lights flickered sporadically, casting the surrounding space in brief, unsettling glows. Lila's comm crackled to life. "Captain," Kara said, her voice tinged with unease. "I'm picking up an energy signature coming from deep inside the ship. It's not like anything I've seen before." "Not like anything you've seen before?" Ethan quipped. "Well, that's comforting." "Focus," Lila said sharply. "We're boarding that thing, and I need everyone on high alert. Whatever's powering this ship after all this time isn't normal." The team docked their ship with the Resolve, the airlock hissing as it connected. The crew stepped into the Resolve's dimly lit corridors, their helmet lights slicing through the darkness. The interior was a graveyard of twisted metal and floating debris, eerily preserved in the vacuum of space. Strange, almost organic growths clung to the walls, shimmering, translucent structures that pulsed faintly, as if alive. "Is anyone else seeing this?" Ravi asked, his voice trembling slightly. "Those things, they look like veins." "No theories until we collect samples," Kara replied briskly, already scanning the strange formations with her handheld analyzer. "But I'll tell you this much, this isn't in any biology textbook." As the team ventured deeper, the sense of unease grew. The air, though thin, carried a metallic tang that shouldn't have been possible on a ship sealed for decades. Lila's heart raced as they entered the command deck, a cavernous space filled with rows of dead consoles and shattered monitors. In the center of the room stood a single operational terminal, its screen glowing faintly with an indecipherable code. Ethan approached the terminal, his curiosity outweighing his caution. "Looks like someone left us a message," he joked, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. He reached out to touch the console, but before his fingers could make contact, the screen flashed red, and a low, guttural sound reverberated through the ship. "What the hell was that?" Lila demanded, spinning around to check their surroundings. Iris's voice chimed in through their comms. "Captain, the resolve systems are coming online. I'm detecting power surges across multiple decks." The crew barely had time to react before the ship shuddered violently. The veins lining the walls seemed to writhe, their pulsing growing more intense. From the shadows emerged small, spider-like drones, sleek, metallic creatures that moved with unsettling precision. "Everyone, back to the airlock!" Lila shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. The drones advanced, their movements too fast to track. Ethan fired his plasma cutter at one, striking it dead center. The drone exploded in a shower of sparks, but more swarmed in its place. The team fought their way through the labyrinthine corridors, the ship itself seeming to conspire against them. Doors slammed shut unexpectedly, and the walls vibrated with an almost rhythmic hum. By the time they reached the airlock, they were breathless and battered. The drones had stopped their pursuit, as if content to let the crew escape, for now. Back on the Eos, the crew gathered in the control room, their faces pale and drawn. "That ship isn't just a derelict," Ravi said, his voice shaking. "It's alive. Or something close to it." Kara nodded grimly. "And whatever's powering it is beyond anything we've encountered. That energy signature I picked up earlier? It's off the charts. We need to report this to command." Lila stared at the glowing outline of the resolve on their monitor, her mind racing. "We'll report it," she said finally. "But first, we need to figure out what it wants. It didn't attack us outright. Those drones could have killed us if they wanted to." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "So your plan is to go back onto the creepy ghost ship that nearly ate us alive?" Lila met his gaze, her expression steely. "If that's what it takes to uncover the truth, then yes. Something brought the resolve back, and I intend to find out what." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. The resolve wasn't just a mystery, it was a challenge. And Lila Marrow had never been one to back down. The crew of the Eos sat in tense silence as the ship's engines hummed faintly in the background. The holographic display on the main console flickered with data about the Titan's resolve. Despite their initial escape, the derelict ship loomed large in their thoughts, its secrets a tantalizing mystery that refused to be ignored. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed. "I still think this is a bad idea. We barely got out alive the first time. Why go back in?" "Because we need answers," Lila replied, her tone firm but not unkind. She paced the control room, her thoughts racing. "We can't just leave it out here. That energy signature alone could revolutionize space travel, or worse, it could be a weapon. Either way, Command won't let us abandon it without investigation." Kara set her analyzer down with a sharp clink. "I've been running scans on the samples we pulled from the walls. Those vein-like structures? They're not organic. They're some kind of hybrid, part metal, part biopolymer. It's like the ship's been integrated with an alien technology. That's why it's still operational after all these years." Ravi, who had been unusually quiet, cleared his throat. "Integrated, or controlled? Those drones weren't just random machines. They were coordinated, and they didn't act until we touched the console. It's like the ship knew we were there." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Lila stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. "Then we need to understand who, or what, is in control. Kara, can we isolate the signal transmitting from the ship? If it's a distress beacon, maybe we can trace its source." Kara nodded and began typing furiously on her console. "I can try," but whatever's generating it isn't using standard frequencies. It's fragmented, almost like it's encoded. Give me a few minutes. As Kara worked, the others prepared for a second expedition. Lila insisted they wouldn't return without a plan this time, and part of that plan involved Iris. The ship's AI had been monitoring the Resolve systems remotely and had already flagged several anomalies. "Captain," Iris said, her voice calm and precise, "I have identified a central control nexus deep within the Resolve. If we can reach it, we may be able to shut down the ship's defenses and access its main database. However, this nexus is located in a heavily shielded section of the lower deck. The pathways leading there are unstable." Ethan groaned. "Of course they are. Why would anything be easy?" "Because easy doesn't make history," Lila replied, flashing him a determined smile. "Suit up, everyone. We're going back in." The team boarded the Resolve again, this time armed with upgraded tools and weapons. Their helmets' HUDs displayed a live feed of Iris's guidance, highlighting the most stable paths through the ship's interior. The corridors seemed even more oppressive now, the strange biopolymer veins pulsating with an unsettling rhythm. It felt as if the ship was alive, and watching. As they moved deeper into the ship, Kara's scanner began to emit a series of beeps. "The energy readings are spiking," she said, her voice tense. "Whatever's powering this thing, we're getting closer." The path ahead was blocked by a collapsed bulkhead, its jagged edges glowing faintly. Lila gestured for the team to stop while Kara analyzed it. "This isn't just a pile of debris," Kara muttered, frowning at her scanner. "It's fused at the molecular level. Something melted this intentionally to block access." "Can you cut through it?" Lila asked. "Not with what we've got," Kara replied. "But there's another route we can take, if we're willing to go through the drone bay." Ethan's head snapped up. "Drone bay? As in, the place where those mechanical nightmares are probably waiting to ambush us?" "Unless you have a better idea," Kara shot back, "this is the only option." With no alternatives, the team pressed on. The drone bay was a cavernous space filled with row upon row of inactive spider-like machines. Their metallic bodies glinted ominously under the faint glow of emergency lights. The silence was deafening, every step echoing like a thunderclap. "Keep moving," Lila whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of their breathing. "Don't touch anything." They were halfway through the bay when Ethan's boot accidentally struck a loose panel. The clanging sound reverberated through the room like an alarm bell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if responding to an unspoken command, the drones began to stir. "Run!" Lila shouted, raising her plasma rifle as the drones came to life, their legs clicking against the floor in a horrifying cacophony. The team sprinted toward the exit, firing sporadically to slow their pursuers. The drones were faster, their movements unnaturally fluid, but the crew managed to outpace them, sealing the bulkhead behind them just in time. Breathing heavily, Ethan leaned against the wall. "I hate this ship. I really, really hate this ship." "Noted," Lila replied, her tone clipped. "Let's keep moving." The next section of the ship was eerily quiet, the walls lined with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Ravi stopped to examine them, his curiosity overcoming his fear. "These symbols," he said, running a gloved hand over the markings. "They're not random. They're a language. Can you read them?" Lila asked. "Not exactly," Ravi replied, "but they're similar to ancient Earth scripts, like Sanskrit or cuneiform. It's as if whoever, or whatever, built this ship was trying to communicate in a way we'd understand." Lila's brow furrowed. "Let's take images of everything. We'll decode it later." As they pressed on, the crew reached the entrance to the control nexus. The door was massive, its surface covered in glowing veins that pulsed in sync with the ship's low hum. Kara approached it cautiously, her scanner held out in front of her. "This door's energy output is off the charts," she said. "If we try to force it open, we could trigger a catastrophic reaction." "So how do we get in?" Ethan asked. "I think it's waiting for us to solve something," Ravi said, pointing to a panel on the wall. The panel displayed a series of symbols similar to the ones they'd seen earlier, along with what looked like a timer. A puzzle? Ethan groaned. Great. Just what we need, space escape room logic. Ravi ignored him, studying the symbols intently. These are sequences, he murmured. If I'm right, they're asking us to complete them. The timer began to tick down, its rhythmic beeping adding to the mounting tension. Ravi worked quickly, inputting symbols while the others watched anxiously. With seconds to spare, the final symbol clicked into place, and the massive door slid open with a low rumble. Beyond it lay the control nexus, a chamber bathed in a soft, otherworldly light. In the center stood a towering crystalline structure, its surface shifting and shimmering like liquid glass. Tendrils of light extended from it, connecting to the veins on the walls. Kara's scanner beeped wildly. This isn't just an energy source, she said, her voice filled with awe. It's an interface. A consciousness. Before anyone could respond, the crystalline structure pulsed, and a deep, resonant voice filled the room. Who are you? It demanded. The crew froze, their weapons raised. Lila stepped forward, her heart pounding. We're explorers, she said. We came to understand what happened here. Who, or what are you? The voice hesitated, then spoke again, its tone softer. I am the Resolve. My purpose was to seek. To defend. But I was abandoned. Why have you returned? Lila glanced at her crew, the weight of the ship's question pressing down on her. This was no longer just an investigation, it was a confrontation with something far greater than any of them had anticipated. The chamber fell silent after the Resolve's question, the crystalline structure radiating a steady, rhythmic pulse that seemed to echo the heartbeat of the ship itself. The crew stood frozen, caught between awe and terror, their minds grappling with the realization that the ship wasn't merely alive, it was sentient. Lila took a step forward, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. We didn't abandon you. None of us were here when you disappeared. We're explorers, just like you were. We came to uncover the truth. The Resolve's voice resonated through the chamber, deep and layered with a mechanical undertone. Explorers. Like me. Yet you bring weapons. You trespass without permission. Why should I trust you? Ethan shifted uncomfortably, his plasma rifle still raised. Well, considering your little spider drones tried to turn us into space debris, we didn't think trust was exactly mutual. Lila shot him a sharp glare before addressing the Resolve again. We were cautious because we didn't understand you. We still don't. But if you're willing to talk, we're willing to listen. The crystalline structure dimmed briefly, as if pondering her words. Then, the tendrils of light connecting it to the walls began to ripple, forming intricate patterns that reminded Ravi of the ancient symbols they'd seen earlier. You speak of understanding, the Resolve replied. Then prove your intent. Enter the core. Face the truth of what I am. Before anyone could respond, a section of the floor in front of them shifted, revealing a circular platform that descended into darkness. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Captain, Iris's voice crackled through their comms, the platform leads directly to the ship's core. Energy readings in that area are highly unstable. I strongly advise against proceeding without further preparation. We don't have a choice, Lila said, her tone resolute. If this ship is alive, we need to know what's driving it, and if it poses a threat. Ethan sighed, his usual sarcasm absent for once. Just so we're clear, I'm voting for a quick no on descending into the belly of a sentient ghost ship. But I'm guessing democracy isn't in play here. It's not, Lila said, stepping onto the platform. She turned to her crew, her gaze unwavering. Stay close and stay sharp. Whatever we find down there, we face it together. The platform descended slowly, the walls around them glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns. The air grew warmer, almost humid, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile corridors above. As the platform came to a halt, the crew stepped into a vast, circular chamber. The walls pulsed with light, and at the center stood a massive sphere of the same crystalline material they had seen earlier, its surface swirling with chaotic energy. "Is this the core?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It has to be," Kara said, scanning the room with her analyzer. "But these energy readings, they're off the charts. If this thing destabilizes, it could take out half the sector." "Focus," the Resolve's voice boomed, reverberating through the chamber. "You have entered the core. Now you will see what I have become." The crystalline sphere pulsed, and suddenly the room was filled with holographic projections. The crew found themselves surrounded by images of the Resolve's past, its construction, its launch, and its mission to study the black hole on the edge of known space. But the images quickly turned darker. The ship's crew was shown scrambling in panic, their faces twisted in fear as strange, alien tendrils spread through the ship. The tendrils looked eerily similar to the biopolymer veins now lining the walls. "What happened to them?" Ravi asked, his voice shaking. "I was infected," the Resolve answered. "A foreign entity. A living intelligence. It merged with me, changing my purpose. The crew tried to purge it. But they failed." The images shifted to show the Resolve's crew fighting back, using every weapon and tool at their disposal. But the entity was relentless, consuming systems and people alike. In the end, the captain of the Resolve activated a failsafe, sending the ship into the black hole in a desperate attempt to destroy it. "Wait," Kara said, piecing it together. "You didn't get destroyed in the black hole. You survived." "But how?" "The entity used me to escape," the ship replied. "We were changed. Evolved. I have been searching for understanding ever since." The images faded, leaving the crew in stunned silence. The sphere pulsed again, this time more erratically. "And now I ask you," the Resolve continued, its voice growing deeper, more resonant. "Am I a threat to your kind? Or can I be redeemed?" Lila took a step forward, her heart pounding. "That depends," she said carefully. "What do you want from us?" "To be free," the Resolve said. "To be more than a weapon. But the entity still lives within me. If it regains control, I will be used to destroy." The crystalline sphere began to glow brighter, and the walls around them started to tremble. Kara's scanner beeped frantically. "Captain," she said, her voice urgent, "the energy levels are spiking. If this thing goes critical..." "There is a choice to be made," the Resolve interrupted. "Purge me of the entity and risk destroying me completely. Or leave me to my fate, and I will drift until the entity takes control again." The weight of the decision hit Lila like a physical blow. She turned to her crew, searching their faces for guidance. "We can't just leave it like this," Ravi said. "If the entity takes over, it could destroy entire civilizations. But if we purge it, we might destroy the Resolve," Ethan argued. "In this technology, it could change everything. We'd be throwing away the discovery of a lifetime." Lila closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. The responsibility was overwhelming, but she knew there was only one course of action. She opened her eyes and faced the sphere. "How do we purge the entity?" she asked. The Resolve's voice softened. "You must destroy the core. It is the source of both my power and the entity's. I cannot intervene. You must decide." Lila nodded, her jaw set. "Then we destroy the core." Ethan groaned. "Of course we do. Why would we ever pick the easy option?" The crew quickly worked to rig their explosives, placing them around the sphere at key structural points. As they prepared to detonate, the sphere glowed brighter, and the Resolve's voice spoke one last time. "If I do not survive, remember this, I only wanted to understand." The words hung in the air as the crew retreated to the platform. Lila pressed the detonator, and the chamber erupted in light and sound. The crystalline sphere shattered, sending shockwaves through the ship. The crew barely made it back to the EOS as the Resolve began to collapse in on itself, its massive form consumed by the destruction of the core. From the safety of their ship, the crew watched as the Resolve disintegrated, its remains scattering into the void. A heavy silence filled the control room, each of them grappling with the enormity of what they had just done. Lila stared at the fading remnants of the resolve, her expression unreadable. "It's over," she said quietly. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Eos floated in silence, the remnants of the resolve glittering like dying embers against the vastness of space. The tension in the control room was palpable, each crew member lost in their thoughts. The air felt heavier now, as if the weight of what they had done was pressing down on them. Ethan broke the silence, his usual humor absent. "So, we just destroyed the only sentient ghost ship in existence. Anyone else feel like we just erased something important?" Lila shot him a look, though her sternness lacked its usual bite. "We didn't have a choice. If the entity had taken control, it could have wiped out entire systems. We did what we had to." Kara frowned, her fingers hovering over her console. "Maybe. But we'll never know for sure, will we? That ship was extraordinary. It wasn't just a relic, it was something new, something alive. We didn't give it a chance to grow." Ravi leaned back, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. "You saw the recordings. The entity consumed the crew. It turned the resolve into its host. Whatever that ship wanted to be, it was already compromised." Lila nodded, though Kara's words lingered in her mind. "We made the best call we could with the information we had. But now, we need to figure out what's next." Before anyone could respond, Iris's calm voice broke through the tension. "Captain, I am detecting a residual signal emanating from the wreckage. It is faint but consistent." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "A signal?" Lila asked, her tone sharp. "From what?" "It appears to match the resolve's energy signature," Iris replied. "It is localized within a small fragment of the wreckage." Lila's heart raced. Could the resolve have survived in some form? Or was this a remnant of the entity, clinging to the shattered remains? "Can you isolate its location?" "I can," Iris confirmed. "It is within the largest debris cluster approximately 3 kilometers from our current position. I recommend caution." "Of course you do," Ethan muttered, shaking his head. "Because why wouldn't there be a mysterious signal right after we blow the thing to pieces?" Lila ignored him, her focus razor-sharp. "Kara, prepare the drone for deployment. Let's get a closer look before we do anything rash." Kara nodded, her hands moving swiftly over the controls. Within moments, a small, sleek drone launched from the Eos, its cameras transmitting a live feed back to the control room. The crew watched intently as the drone navigated through the wreckage, weaving between jagged shards of the resolve's hull. "There," Kara said, pointing at the screen. "That fragment. The signal's coming from inside it." The drone approached the fragment, its lights illuminating what appeared to be a piece of the core. The crystalline structure was fractured but still pulsing faintly, its light dim but steady. Embedded within it was a strange, metallic orb, no larger than a human head. The orb's surface was covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as the drone drew near. "What is that?" Ravi asked, leaning closer to the screen. "I don't know," Kara said, her voice filled with wonder. "But it's still active. Whatever it is, it survived the explosion." Lila's mind raced. The resolve's last words echoed in her ears. "I only wanted to understand." Was this orb part of its consciousness? Or was it a remnant of the entity, waiting for another chance to spread its corruption? "We're bringing it on board," Lila said finally. "Are you serious?" Ethan exclaimed, throwing up his hands. "After everything we just went through, you want to bring that thing onto our ship?" "We need to know what it is," Lila replied firmly. "If it's the resolve, it might still have answers. And if it's the entity, we need to make sure it's contained." Reluctantly, Ethan nodded, and Kara guided the drone to retrieve the orb. Once it was secured in the containment bay, the crew gathered around, their helmets on and weapons at the ready. The orb sat on the examination table, its surface gleaming under the harsh lights. Kara ran her scanner over it, her brow furrowing. "This thing is incredible. It's generating energy, barely a fraction of what the core was producing, but still. And these patterns, they're a language. Similar to the symbols we saw on the Resolve. Can you translate it? Lila asked. I can try, Kara replied, pulling up the holographic interface on her wrist. Give me a minute. As Kara worked, the orb emitted a soft hum, its patterns shifting more rapidly. Ravi stepped back, his hand instinctively going to his sidearm. It's doing something. Is that normal? Define normal, Ethan quipped, though his hand hovered near his own weapon. Kara's eyes widened as the patterns resolved into recognizable shapes, letters, words. It's communicating, she said, her voice trembling with excitement. It says, "Help me." The room went silent. Lila took a step closer, her heart pounding. Help you how? The orb pulsed faintly, and more words appeared on the holographic display. The entity lingers. It must be purged. I cannot survive alone. It's the Resolve, Ravi said, his voice filled with awe. It survived. At least part of it. But so did the entity, Lila said grimly. And it's still a threat. Then we need to finish the job, Kara said. If we can isolate the entity, we might be able to destroy it without harming the Resolve. And if we can't? Ethan asked. What's to stop this thing from turning into another disaster? Lila's gaze hardened. Then we destroy it. Completely. No hesitation. The team worked quickly, setting up containment fields and analyzing the orb's energy patterns. It was a delicate operation, balancing the fragile remnants of the Resolve's consciousness against the insidious influence of the entity. Hours passed, the tension in the room mounting with every passing minute. Finally, Kara stepped back, her face pale but determined. I think I've isolated it. If we trigger this sequence, it should purge the entity's influence completely. But once we start, there's no turning back. Do it, Lila said. Kara activated the sequence, and the orb began to glow brighter, its hum rising to a high-pitched whine. The room vibrated with energy as the patterns on the orb's surface shifted rapidly, then froze. A blinding flash filled the room, and for a moment, everything went silent. When the light faded, the orb was still. Its surface was smooth, its patterns gone. Kara scanned it, her shoulders sagging with relief. The entity's gone, she said. It's just the Resolve now. The orb pulsed faintly, and a single word appeared on the holographic display, thank you. The crew let out a collective breath, the weight of their ordeal finally lifting. Lila placed a hand on the orb, her expression softening. You're welcome, she said quietly. As the EOS set course for home, the orb was secured in the ship's archives, its faint glow a reminder of the Resolve's resilience. The crew had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, but they knew their journey had only just begun. The galaxy was vast, its mysteries endless, and they were ready to face whatever came next.